Am I the a-hole for not wanting to contribute to my stepson's college fund? My 39M and my wife Emily, 38F, have been married for 12 years. Emily has a son James, 17, from a previous relationship with Dan. Em left Dan when she caught him cheating with a coworker. They shared 50-50 custody of James. I met Em about a year after he had left Dan. A year later, Dan married his affair partner, and Em and I got married soon after. James never really bonded to me. I admit that I tried a little too hard initially to get him to like me, but backed off when I realized I was trying too hard and it was having the opposite impact. Over the years, we've built a tense acceptance of sorts, if that makes sense. Em and I have 3 kids, 10F, 7M and 4M. James doesn't have a good relationship with them either. He bonds well with Dan's sons, but doesn't like spending much time with our kids. He isn't mean to them but just ignores them mostly. The eldest 2 now just avoid him when he is home. Em and I both have well-paying jobs, and early on, we decided that I would contribute 80% to our trio's college fund, and Em would do 20%, cause she would contribute 100% to James' college fund. We didn't know if Dan was making any such arrangements on his end, but we thought that at least this way James would have something instead of nothing. Em recently sat him down to talk to him about his college fund. He seemed happy with the financial help he was going to get. He went off to Dan's for the weekend, and when he came back he asked Em about our kids' college funds. When he learned that the amount was fairly higher than his, he was upset. When he asked about the disparity, Em told him about our college fund setup. He was furious to know that I hadn't contributed to his college fund. He said that I was just pretending to play family with him all these years. That I really didn't care about him and was a heartless a-hole. Em suggests that we could take some money out of our youngest's fund and give it to James and that she would add it back over time. But she said that it's my call. That she won't pressurize me either way and would accept whatever I decided. Quite frankly, I don't want to do it. James idolizes his crappy father, even now that he knows he cheated on his mother. I could deal with his crappy behavior with me, but I never understood his attitude towards our kids. We even tried going to family therapy. He refused to go because I wasn't his family. Now when he needs money, suddenly I am family. I know I am perhaps being petty, but I don't want to give him the money. Am I the a-hole? Edit. I think some clarifications are in order. 1. I don't hate that James idolizes his father. I hate that he blames his mother for their family breaking up. When James was 13, he had heard from one of his older cousin, Dan's side, what his father had done that led to Emily leaving. When he confronted her about it, she explained. We tried for therapy then but didn't happen, we'll explain later. Last year, he told his mother that he believes she was responsible. That instead of leaving Dan, she should have forgotten about what he did and continued to stay with him. Em was expectedly shocked, but when she asked him if the situation was reversed and she had cheated on Dan and he left her, would then Dan be blamed for the family breaking up? He said no, that would definitely be her fault, and made no further explanations. This was not as a result of an argument or heat of the moment statement. Ironically, this was a casual dinner table conversation. The other kids had to be excused from the table. 2. When Em and I had gotten together and things were starting to look serious, she had wanted to take him to a child therapist who could help him adjust better to the changing situation around him. Since they shared 50-50 custody, Dan's consent was needed. He refused. When we were going to get married, we tried for therapy. Dan said he got married before us and James had no issues. We were overreacting, he didn't need therapy. When the above incident happened, when Em was pregnant with our daughter, and most recently after last year's incident. This time we asked him directly. We thought if he agreed to family therapy then we could speak to our lawyer and work around the custody arrangement since he was almost an adult. This was when he refused therapy saying I wasn't family. 3. For all those saying that I am treating a teenager like an adult. That I made him feel like the other and not one of us. We tried. When we both starting earning well, we wanted on splurge on our kids during birthdays and holidays. James was never excluded. Whatever our kids got, he got too. In fact, as he is older, he got to pick what he wanted. For his 11th birthday, he wanted to go to Disney World. Both of Dan's kids were invited. His youngest son and my daughter are the same age. He went, she wasn't invited. We stayed home. 4. We started the college funds about a year after our daughter was born. Em couldn't start one for James earlier since she was a stay-at-home mom when she was with Dan. It took her a while to get back on her feet. She wasn't in a position to immediately start a college fund for him. What a lot of you pointed out is right, he has been shortchanged. Em will recidify that and make up the deficit he should get by the time he starts college. But that will still not make it as much as he remaining 3. We have decided to sit and have a chat with him this weekend about everything. Relevant comments/more info. Comment 1. When he learned that the amount was fairly higher than his. Why would this even be something you shared with a child? OP replies. I didn't share it. My wife did. James doesn't like interacting with me. James is 17. He's not a child anymore. Comment 2. He has 2 parents to contribute to college. They can find him. Sounds like Dan had better step up. OP replies. I doubt that would happen. Dan has never been good at keeping a steady income flow and his wife is a som. They aren't desperately struggling to make ends meet, but I could make an educated guess to say Dan has probably not saved up for any of his kids' college funds. Comment 3. Is the amount your wife contributes to your kids more than she contributes for her son? OP replies. No. She contributed more to James' fund. That was the agreement. Since we had assumed that Dan wouldn't have done anything, we had decided that my wife would contribute more for James and I would do the same for our 3. Comment 4. How old was he when he refused counseling? All of your posts so far imply this happened when he was 5 years old, hardly old enough to be able to make that decision. So are you saying you tried therapy when he was much older and not when he was younger? I'm trying to understand how you and your wife could see that he was dissociating and not go talk to a judge to get therapy mandated. My POV is that it should not have been left up to a 5 to 10-year-old whether he went to therapy or not, and if the dad refused, that should have been addressed in court. Or are you saying therapy was only considered years later? Because why would you think I meant custody now when I thought you were trying that when he was young? I'm sorry, I'm confused. I know you feel defensive but you're the adult. As is your wife. You both did not do everything you could have here. Again, I don't think you're the a-hole about the money, but it does sound like the ball was dropped to get him into therapy and keep him there and to build a real relationship with him. Definitely not all on you, but collectively the adults in his life failed him. I hope he recognizes all you've tried to do for him, and I hope you figure out how to let go of the resentment you're carrying. I'm sure James can and has picked up on it his whole life. Poor kid, he got screwed here. It's no picnic for you either, but you did choose to be a ST. OP replies. When Emily and I started getting serious, she had wanted to take James to a child therapist who could help him adjust better to the changing situation around him. Since Em and Dan, bio dad, shared 50-50 custody, if one parent refused then we couldn't proceed. Unsurprisingly, Dan refused. Not James. James was a toddler, not old enough to give consent. When we were about to get married we tried for therapy again. Dan, who had gotten married to his affair partner a couple of months ago, refused again, saying James was fine with his marriage, there was no reason for him to not be fine with ours. He further insinuated that going to a therapist would make James feel like something was wrong with him when he was perfectly fine and we were overreacting. When James found out about Dan cheating on his mother being the reason why they ended things, Dan said wanting to take James to therapy was M&I's way of brainwashing him, instilling thoughts in his head about how evil his dad is, so yeah, he refused again. When Emily was pregnant with our daughter, therapy was requested. Therapy was denied. Reason: Dan said James was fine with his son, so therapy not needed. We did speak to our lawyer to ask if we could still approach the court to say Dan keeps refusing therapy that is most certainly hampering our relationship. Our lawyer said technically Dan was right. James wasn't showing the same level of detachment with his family that he was with ours. It could have tilted the custody arrangement in Dan's favor. When he accused M of being the reason their family broke up, we offered therapy as an option again. Since James was 17 by now, we asked him, hoping if he agreed we could circumnavigate the need for Dan's consent since James was nearly an adult. James refused, saying I wasn't his family, so family therapy wasn't necessary. I haven't resented James since the day I met him. I don't exactly resent him now either. I am just tired of the whole situation. Update: it's been an eye-opening weekend. Thanks to everyone who weighed in, even the aggressive ones. I knew what I was signing up for posting on Reddit. Before the update, a couple clarifications because gaps in info turned into wild assumptions. When I said I came on a little too strong with James when we met, some of you pictured me grabbing a toddler by the neck and hissing, "Call me daddy." No. I was nervous and acted like an idiot and used an over-the-top baby voice because I'd barely been around toddlers. Emily later said I sounded like a circus clown on 2 cartons of Red Bull. Cringe? Absolutely. Malicious? No. Many had questions regarding therapy. I shared the timeline in this comment thread, so I'm not going to rewrite that again. Many called my wife the AW for sharing the college fund amounts for our kids. I showed her the post. She explained James came back from Dan's with questions when the fund started, how much, etc. He said, paraphrasing, "So mine is 30 and theirs is Y. With his 30 higher than our kids' Y." Without thinking, yes, stupidly, Emily corrected him, "No, yours is AAA and theirs is BBB." That snowballed into what I wrote earlier. It wasn't a diabolical plan to make me pay more, it was a thoughtless correction. With that out of the way, Emily, James and I sat down for a conversation yesterday. James didn't want to talk to me, but I told him that if he expected me to even think about contributing to his college fund, then I've got loads of questions he needs to answer. It was an extremely long conversation and many revelations came to be. So, I am going to give a summary of the things we finally found out from James. Even before Emily and Dan had broken up, not divorced, they were never married, Dan had occasionally brought James to his AP's place, so James was familiar AP. After the breakup, Dan immediately moved in with his AP. M, who was a SOM till then, struggled initially to get back on her feet. Needless to say, James' home life with M was a little more chaotic than at Dan and his AP's. M hadn't told James that she had left his father since he'd cheated on her. Telling that to a toddler wouldn't make any sense. But apparently, in the early days, Dan used to tell James that M would eventually come back to him. I think he may have been holding out hope for reuniting with M. And that's where I came in. Dan told James that as long as I am around, I would not let M go back to Dan. When Dan married his AP, he told James that it was temporary. It was a way to make M jealous. When we got married, he told James that it was my way of making it even more difficult for M to get back to their family. When James had found out from his cousin, Dan's side, that his father had cheated on his mother, which was the reason for their breakup. When James had asked Em about it, she had been open and honest about everything. When he confronted Dan about the same, he told James that Em had left him for a long time and his loneliness made him miss her a lot, and so he found some comfort with AP. Emily's father had met with a car accident and she was with her parents for about 3 weeks to help them. And that's all the alone time Dan could handle before he needed to dip his wick in something. But it was a reasonable enough explanation for James absolve his father of all sins. When Em got pregnant with our daughter, Dan told James, "Now that I have started pumping my spawn into his mother," exact words James used, James' family was destroyed forever. He told James that Em and I had been wanting to take him to therapy, which was actually a ruse. What we were really trying to do was take him to doctor who would declare him a problem child, and then we would ship him off to boarding school so that we could continue to play happy family without being bothered by him. Only Dan and his family was fighting to keep James with them. James admitted that he had hoped his detached behavior around my family and happy and joyous behavior around Dan's would convince Em that my kids and I were evil and she would eventually leave us. But sadly, I kept knocking up his mom, making it harder for her to leave. Expectedly, Emily was beyond distraught to hear everything. To be honest, in the moment I couldn't wrap up head around it much either. I asked if Dan had a college fund saved up for him and his sons. James said AP's parents have set up a trust fund for Dan's sons, but that does not include James since he isn't their grandson. Dan's not saved up anything for anyone. I asked James why he suddenly thinks I should contribute to his fund when he has turned down every opportunity for us to be a family. He said he was actually okay with the amount that Em initially told him about, but Dan made him realize that we were undercutting him, so he came back to demand more. I asked if I pay the money, will that then make us family? Even if he can't accept me as a step-parent, can we be friends? Can he be a little more friendlier with my kids when he is around? He straight up said no. He said that after all these years he knows me or my kids are not the evil beings his father made us seem. But he still feels I am the reason his parents could never get back together again, and for that he will always hate me. And since my kids are, well, my kids, he's never going to like them either. And since now he knows that Emily isn't going to leave her family, he said his plan was once he was off to college he would cut off contact with all of us. He does plan to eventually get back in touch with his mother when he feels he is ready to forgive for breaking up his family, but he can't do that right now. Emily and I have had a long and honest discussion. I have decided that I will not be making any contributions to James' college fund. Emily will continue the contribution that she was already making and hand it over to him once he turns 18. We will no longer be pursuing family therapy with James. We will not try to change James' mind about going no contact with us after he goes off to college. We've done all that we could do, we're going to stop now. If James is happy with Dan's family, then we're happy for him. It's going to be hard for Emily, but even she has accepted that after James' recent revelations, she's having a hard time reconciling her little boy with this cynical teenager. We have both taken individual and couples therapy before. Mainly due to the stress and anxiety James' behavior used to put on us as a family. We are looking into starting again. Hopefully, we'll be able to overcome this in time. Relevant comments. Comment 1. Yikes, NTA didn't think you were even before the update, but this makes me sad. Wish you had asked him this question years ago. I'm surprised y'all didn't think of that. The one sentence where you said that James was fine with the money until he got home from his father's and started asking questions, I knew his father was whispering in his ears. OP replies, we always knew Dan was up to no good. Whenever we had tried to have conversations like this before, either he would throw a tantrum and not communicate, or he would just sit there like a stone and not say a word, and as said before, therapy was repeatedly denied. He only entertained this conversation because of the money he is going to get from his mother and tolerated my presence because of the possibility of me contributing to his fund. Update 2. I've been getting so many messages and comments that I haven't been able to reply to them all. Emily and I are deeply grateful for all the kind words we have received, and even the unkind ones have been insightful in their own way. A lot of you asked how we did not know that Dan was brainwashing James against us. It's not that we didn't know. We knew that some level of parental alienation was happening, hence why we repeatedly advocate for therapy, but we didn't know to what extent. Like I said in a comment before, whenever we tried to talk to James, we would either throw a tantrum or simply sit like a stone and not say a word. Since therapy was denied repeatedly, we really couldn't do much. The fact that Dan filled James' head with this kind of BLLSHT, we really didn't know. Last year, when James spewed his judgment on how M was to blame for their family breaking up, is when we had our first inclination of how much James had been poisoned against us. As for suing Dan for parental alienation, at this point, it doesn't matter. James will turn 18 early next year and we have no proof of anything. We did not record the conversation we had with him, and James is not a reliable witness. He would easily lie to protect his father. Now, coming to the recent developments. After everything that James said, Emily was very shocked and devastated. For all those who said she should have told James that Dan was the problem, not us, and so many other things. Reality was that she said nothing because she couldn't. Real life isn't like some scene from a movie or series where characters have replies ready at the tip of their tongue. When your son spews this level of hate towards you, it's hard to comprehend and respond with zingers. That said, we have had time to think things over. And we have considered a lot of the advice that we got from here. Emily has decided that while she will continue to add to James' fund till he turns 18, she will not be handing over the money to him. As per the advice given by many, she will be paying directly to the institution that James gets admission into. If he chooses not to go to college, then the money will be held back and given to him when he turns 25. In the hopefully very unlikely case of Emily passing before James turns 25, then our lawyer will be in charge of ensuring that James gets the money at the allotted time. This is to ensure that neither James nor Dan can blame me for meddling with the money. Since our last conversation, James had not come home. He stayed at a friend's place for a few days, then went back to his father's place. Emily asked him to come over on Saturday. She sat him down and told him that since he is hell-bent on giving up his relationship with us, then there was no point walking on eggshells around him any longer. She told him that she was hurt and disappointed by his behavior. For him to believe that his mother was to be blamed for their family breaking up was unacceptable. M said that if he feels his father cheating is acceptable and she should have gone back to him, then she cannot see eye to eye with him. This is not word for word of the conversation. I am mostly paraphrasing. She told him that I will not be making any contributions to his fund. Since he doesn't think of me as family, I have no obligations to add to his funds. And if he still feels that his fund is lacking, then he should ask Dan to make up for the deficit. She also told him that he will not be getting direct access to his funds and that payments from the fund will be made directly to whatever college he attends. He was also made aware of what happens if he doesn't go to college. Emily also let him know that from now on, if he wishes not to come over to our place, he doesn't have to. We discussed it with our lawyer. While Emily will not be giving up custody yet, she will not be enforcing that James stay with her as per the custody arrangements. He silently listened to everything M said. He didn't leave his room that night and went back to Dan's place on Sunday. We haven't heard anything from him since then. I hope you guys like this video. If you did, make sure like, comment, share and subscribe the channel Relationship Drama Stories.